What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Command and Console. My name is Jason. Today we're having a look at my favourite 5 PlayStation 1 games ever. One honourable mention for this video is Capcom's I wouldn't go as far as saying forgotten sequel, but underappreciated sequel, and that will be Dino Crisis 2. I really love Dino Crisis 2 more than the first game. I prefer the more run and gun kind of aspect to it, the more action focused. I felt like it was more memorable than the first game. And yeah, I played it loads more as a kid, so I've got loads of nostalgia for it anyway. Even to like the little bits of like doors opening and the shotgun sound, for example, stuff like that. But yeah, Dino Crisis 2 is definitely a game I wanted to add to this list, but I don't have it in my collection, so it will be, unfortunately, or fortunately, depends how you look at this, as an honourable mention. Spyro the Dragon. Yeah, this is a quintessential platformer for me on the PlayStation, coming out, you know, towards the end of the 90s, hot on the heels of the new 3D platformer boom. Everyone was trying to do it. Super Mario 64 kind of perfected the idea of 3D platformers, and I think Spyro the Dragon was not as kind of, you know, impactful as that game, but on the same kind of totem pole almost for me. I was definitely more of a Spyro guy than a Crash Bandicoot guy. But yeah, I love the Spyro the Dragon. I like dragons are cool anyway, right? And I do like the story in this. We've got to like save all of your fellow dragons, all being turned to stone, and then you've got to defeat the Nork army, and of course, you know, Nork himself. Yeah, this is a really fun platformer. Loads of cool things to collect. It's that era, that classic era of, you know, a collect 'em up, I suppose. You've got loads of things to collect in there. The gameplay's cool, the voice acting is quirky and silly and really fun. I love this game. That's Spyro the Dragon. Tekken 3, arguably one of the greatest fighting games of all time, if not the best, in my opinion. I remember playing this to death. It's packed with modes on here as well. So much replayability. You know, you wanna with a lot of fighting games from this era, you want to go through arcade mode and beat every arcade mode with each character and unlock their endings, of course. And with doing so, you're able to unlock new characters for the roster, and of course, you get to play other modes as well, like a Tekken bowling, and what my favourite mode in this whole game. It might be even better than the actual game itself. Tekken Force, which is a side view beat 'em up a la Streets of Rage, but it's Tekken and you play as like Jin Kazama. It's so cool. Everyone should have this in their collection, in my opinion. Even if you don't like fighting games, this one has so much variety in there that I think you'll find a game mode that you will really like. Tekken Force is a gold standard in bonus modes for me. That's Tekken 3. Moving on from one of the greatest fighting games of all time to one of the greatest racing games of all time from the greatest series of racing games, especially when you consider simulation racing, Gran Turismo 2. This game took over my life when I picked this up back in the day as a kid. I love the GT mode in this. It's basically a car life sim RPG essentially. Doing your licenses, getting the right cars for specific events, just grinding it out and getting the best cars for the job. This game is fantastic. I absolutely love it. Definitely been topped by GT3 and GT4, of course, but the fact this came out on PS1, and it is a massive jump from the first game, a huge jump in fact. This is still one of my favourite racing games of all time. I adore this one, absolutely adore it. It's definitely deserving on the list for me for favourite PlayStation 1 games. The graphics for the time were unmeasurable, like unbelievably. You couldn't believe what you were seeing. And I always said as a kid as well, the fastest game to look photorealistic would be driving games. And I think I was correct in that assertion back when I was like 12. You know, I love this game so much. It's so good. You just want to keep grinding it out, doing some more races, doing your licenses, and getting more money to buy the best cars that can, you know, enter into those events and just dominate. It's such a good game. But yeah, I do feel like it's a racing life sim RPG. You're living the life of a race car driver in this. And it's great. That's Gran Turismo 2. Resident Evil 2. I can't express how much I adore this game. I remember playing the first game. Never owned the first game as a kid. I used to borrow it off a friend of mine. He used to live up the road from me. I used to borrow it, play it, get to maybe the first zombie encounter, get really scared, give it back, and borrow something else. But every so often, the game would be nagging on my brain as a kid, and I'd want to see how far I could get further. So I'd go and borrow it again and play it more, maybe get a little bit further, get scared again, and then the cycle continues. I remember playing the demo for Resident Evil 2, and wow, what a massive jump in detail, graphics, and generally how the game plays, in like it's got more nuance to it. I love this game so much. This game, I was a bit older obviously when this game came out, so I wasn't as scared of these kind of games. It was spooky, it was creepy for me as a kid, but I remember pushing myself through because the game was so intriguing, the story was interesting, the horror almost kind of kept me going in this game. And obviously the item management, making sure you got ammo, making sure you got the healing herbs and stuff like that, really made me as a kid want to push through and beat this one. I think it's the pinnacle, you know, one half of the pinnacle of survival horror games, the other game being the remake of Resident Evil 1 on the GameCube. But yeah, Resident Evil 2, it is the game that really made me fall in love with horror in video games. I absolutely love this game to pieces. I love the fixed camera angles, were obviously a limitation for the time, but added that kind of desperation where you couldn't see outside of what, you know, you could hear things, but you couldn't see them on screen. So it was a really clever way of amping that horror up as well. Absolutely adore this one. Favorite franchise of all time. That's Resident Evil 2. Number one is it's a no-brainer at the moment for me. Absolute no-brainer. It changed my perspective on video games completely. Video games as a kid were more kind of a time not a time waster, that's the wrong term to say. It was more of a, you know, chuck a game on, play through games, move on to the next game, play a bit of it. There was never a game that really grabbed me to finish the game because the narrative was so intriguing and the gameplay in general was so unique. This game changed that completely. It made me want stories in video games. It made me want just unrivaled action in video games. And that game is, of course, Metal Gear Solid. This game is a pinnacle of video game advancement for the time for me. It's so innovative in its design. It's so creative with its story, even though the story is a bit convoluted and a bit weird and silly. But, you know, Hideo Kojima became the guy that was a bit quirky and silly. But the story keeps you going, and the whole conversations in this game were just captivating as well. The Kodak calls. There was secret Kodak calls as well that you could find if you just ring a comrade up, a colleague up randomly, and they might just give you some random information about the mission that you didn't know beforehand. Really clever design. The fact that, you know, to contact Meryl in the game, you had to look at the back of the CD case and, yeah, and find her Kodak number. It's so clever. It's so clever right there. Such a clever way to implement progression. Obviously, that wouldn't happen now, of course, because, you know, physical media is dropping into the toilet in terms of sales. But such a clever way of progressing the game, and also a clever way to show the powers of an enemy or a boss, for example, like Psycho Mantis. You know, if you didn't swap the controller port to port 2, he can read your movements. He can use his psychic abilities to know what you're going to do at any given moment. And if you swap your controller to controller port 2, he cannot read your movements and stuff like that. But he can read your memory card, and specifically, he will read out any games that you've got that are by Konami, which is pretty cool. And also, he'll let you know if you save too much or not too little. There was some amazingly clever and creative gameplay kind of mechanics in there, kind of ways of like showing things in the game, which I thought was really cool. But it's the stealth and the combat that are the winner for me here. Amazing kind of just like addictive gameplay where you could go all guns blazing if you want to, but you'll probably be overwhelmed and murdered quite quickly. But if you want to go the stealthy approach, this game was satisfying to go through the stealthy approach. And I remember getting the demo for this back in the day and playing that first little bit of the game. I can't remember how far you got in the demo. It was quite a generous demo. I think you got about up to the I think when you meet the DARPA chief, I think that's when the demo ends, I believe. I can't remember, but I remember just playing that over and over and over again and trying to be the stealthiest of stealthies ever in that opening section. And when the full game came out, I was super excited to see what happens next after you meet the DARPA chief. This is the pinnacle for PlayStation 1 video games for me. It will never be topped, in my opinion. Obviously, Resident Evil 2 may flip-flop, but in terms of impactful and how it made me look at video games, this is when video games grew up for me. This is where my perspective went from little kind of games to, you know, to spend my time playing, and then games that really kind of engrossed me as a kind of story medium. Metal Gear Solid is the best PlayStation 1 game ever. That is it, guys. That is my 5 favourite PS1 games of all time, plus my honourable mention, Dino Crisis 2. I love these games. I can stick these games on right now and have so much fun with them. And it's not even nostalgia either. These games have held up for me. I played Metal Gear Solid quite recently, maybe about a year ago, just using the PS3 digital version to play it. And it holds up so well. It holds up so well. It's so much fun. Yeah, all these games hold up. Resident Evil 2 holds up really well. Tekken 3 is just a fighting game perfected. It's so good. Spyro still is great. I'd still rather play this original PS1 version than the remake that came out a little while ago. But yeah, these are my favourites. I can list so many more that I love that I might do a part 2. With all these top game videos that I've done in the past, I can do a part 2 quite easily. But these are my favourite PS1 games ever. So that's it, guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And as always, let's continue to build a PS1 collection.